Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Left Eagle Seminar 2023. I'd like to start off by asking you, if you have a cell phone, please put it into the silent mode. Appreciate that. My name is Ed Parsons. I'm the chairman of the Advancement Committee for Daniel Webster Council. Over the course of the next 3 hours, we will present everything you need to know on the process of going from life to Eagle. To convey this information, we've assembled an esteemed team of presenters embodying decades of experience, serving on Eagle boards from across the council. As the presenters deliver their talks, if any questions arise, and there should be, please raise your hand. It's a very interactive session, and we'll answer it in real time. At this point, I'd like to ask each presenter to introduce themselves in turn, to say a couple words about what you're doing in scouting, and starting with Mrs. Beth Dibble.
Oh, thanks, Ed. Hi, I'm Mrs. Dibble, and I am with Arrowhead District, and I'm also on the council committee dealing with Eagle time extensions and appeals. You don't want to see me normally.
Mr. Sandy Berman.
Mr. Berman, I've spent 10 years as a Scoutmaster. I've been on the Eagle board for a while, too many years to mention. I've also served as the Massabesic District Roundtable Commissioner, and I've done this for, I don't know, about 5 years. So,
Thank you. Mr. J.T. Shoup.
I'm Pastor Shoup, and I am the chairman of the Massabesic Eagle Board, and before that I was chairman of the Committee of Troop 1776. I've held council positions with the Order of the Arrow in my previous council, and also served in different functions with this district. Looking forward to getting to know you today.
Thank you. Mr. Valtuba.
Val Tuba, I'm the advancement chair for Massabesic District, also involved with NYLT, and it's nice to see some familiar faces.
Yep. Mr. Jeff Town.
I'm Jeff Town. I'm with the Arrowhead District. I'm the Advancement Committee Chair, and over the last month or two, the Eagle Board Chair as well.
Thank you. At this point, everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Here's our flag. Just to let you know, in this day and age, less paper, more internet, we'll be referring to many documents, and they're generally available in nhscouting.org. This is the URL, and you should just know at nhscouting.org you can always navigate to these other places. Let me see if I can bring up the website here. This is nhscouting.org. You should know this one. If you want to get to advancement and Eagle stuff, hit more, advancement and awards. Scroll down, becoming an Eagle Scout. And then on the left there's various interesting things like Eagle Resources. But you find for today, all the slides you're going to see today, you don't need to make notes unless you want to. You can download these slides right here. Council Life to Eagle presentation, April 2023. 102 slides already on the website. So that'll save you a lot of writing, but you can certainly take notes as you go if you are so interested. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead with our first speaker, Mr. J.T.
So it's Saturday morning, you got up early, some of you had a long drive, and here you are. So the question I have for all the scouts, why are you here? You can respond to that, like, why do you want to become an Eagle?
I guess we're done then.
Thank you very much, have a great day.
They just like getting up early.
How about, are there any benefits to being an Eagle? Yeah, in the back.
It's a lot of responsibility, it's prestige.
Okay, a lot of responsibility and there's prestige behind it. So you've earned something that most people haven't. So that's a recognition that goes beyond everyone else. Yes?
Open doors, like opportunities.
Like what kind of opportunities that doors might be open? Jobs and what else?
Colleges.
Colleges, excellent. Looks great on your resume. Applications. Did you know that if you join the military, you actually will get a bump up in the rank because you're an Eagle Scout? Anyone else? Yeah.
You develop like planning and leadership skills while completing the project.
Excellent. So you learn how to plan, be prepared in hopefully multiple situations, and also you have a chance to carry out kind of project management and develop your leadership, which we hope you've developed and will carry it through, not only through your Eagle project and the Eagle rank, but well into your future of your lives. Anyone else? Well, we want to commend you for being here. It means that you want to earn your Eagle and you want to know how to do it. So we're here to help you with that, but also so are your troop leaders, your unit leaders, and a bunch of other scouters across the whole council. What's interesting is even if your desire is there, did you know that less than 4% actually earn their Eagle? So why do you think some people don't earn their Eagle? Here are a couple of things that we've looked at that allow us to kind of talk through why people don't earn their Eagle. Maybe in a relationship, especially when you get older and you get closer to graduating. Maybe you're working, you have a job. A lot of times it's hard to balance school and the studies and the projects, and maybe you have sports and other things like that, and then you're working. It's hard to keep scouting going with that. Driving, there's freedom that comes when you're on the road and you get a chance to drive around and kind of be your own boss. Family duties and activities. So sometimes there's a lot of pressure if you grow up in the family where they expect you to do a lot of things at home, or there's activities put on you, family reunions, outings. Maybe the activities might be you're involved with the community, 4-H, or maybe you're in a dance group or a team sport, a club sport, and then volunteering I have here, which I kind of just said a moment ago. Do you think there's any other reasons why someone might not earn their Eagle? So question I close with, and this is to be interactive again. You're here, but why are you here? What is the motivation of you earning your Eagle? Who's most responsible for it? Say it out loud, please.
You're most responsible for getting your Eagle Scout project done and your Eagle Scout rank.
So the individual scout. So it's not your mom?
No.
Not your dad? Not your scoutmaster? Your grandfather or uncle? It's right, it's you as an individual. You're the one most responsible, and you'll get the most out of it as you seek it and fulfill it and then live it out for the rest of your lives. Thank you.
Val Tuba?
The arrow keys are working.
Yep.
Yes.
This section is titled, "What is required to become an Eagle Scout?" And I only have 5 minutes to get through this, so wish me luck. What I've tried to do for this section is to examine the requirements for Eagle rank relative to what you already know, which is star and life ranks, or life ranks. And if there's a difference for Eagle versus star life, I've listed it in red font. The first thing is eligibility up here. Not really a requirement, but, and this doesn't imply that you can earn star life after you turn 18. I'm just pointing out that your 18th birthday is listed as an age limitation. Now, that includes the day of your 18th birthday. And that's the last day that you can complete any of the Eagle requirements. The Eagle rank application itself can be submitted after your 18th birthday, but sooner is better. I'm trying to go back. Oops. If you wait until the day you turn 18 and there's a problem with your application, you're leaving yourself zero recovery time, and it has happened, I know from personal experience. So sooner the better. Active participation. For STAR, 4 months, Life, 6 months, for Eagle, also 6 months. Now, it's a really good idea to understand your Scoutmaster's definition of active, because it's not explicitly written somewhere. And your Scoutmaster, your leadership may have changed. And this is a great question to ask during your unit leader conference for Life Rank, for you to ask and get clarity on that. This must be on a timer. Okay, Scout Spirit, for STAR and Life, you're going to be discussing the past and the present. For Eagle, past, present, and future. They're very interested in knowing and ensuring themselves that you are going to remain an Eagle Scout for the rest of your life. There's also 5 character references required for Eagle, and 6 if you happen to be working. Parent, a religious leader, if you happen to have one, an educational professional from your school, that could be a guidance counselor, principal, teacher, coach, 2 other adults. That could be, neighbors, former Scout leaders, and then if you're working, your employer.
Is it on the timer?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Merit badges. For STAR, you needed 6 total and 4 required. For Life, it was 11 and 7 required. For Eagle, 21 total and 14 required. This is a recent change that went into effect not even a year ago, where they added citizenship and society, and that is now required merit badge. So 14 instead of 13. Leadership. For Life or STAR, any one of 16 positions or a unit leader approved leadership project. For Eagle, there are 15 positions, leadership positions. Bugler does not qualify for Eagle rank.
I'll go faster, so
And there's no option for a unit leader approved leadership project. You need a position of leadership. Approval authority. For community service hours, STAR and Life were both 6 hours. But for your Eagle project, Eagle leadership project, there really is no minimum. You have the freedom to do something big or something small, as long as you show leadership and the Eagle board approves the project. There really are no minimum hours. Your role in the project, for STAR and Life, you were a participant. For your Eagle project, you are the project leader. The approval authority for the project. For STAR and Life, it was your unit leader, but for Eagle, it's going to be the district Eagle board. And that requires an appearance before your district Eagle board. So to make Eagle rank in our council, you have to appear before the Eagle board twice. Once to get approval for your project, and then your final after the project is completed and all the requirements are completed. If you're not sure what district you're in, that information is also on the website. Just go back where it says more, as we saw before, and pull down to districts. And there should, your unit leadership should, if you're not sure, should know what district you belong to. Number 6, statement of life ambitions. During your unit leader conference, you're going to still have one of these for Eagle, but there's a written statement that you need to provide to the Eagle board, and you're going to attach that with your application, called a Statement of Life Ambitions. And this deals with both the past, the present, and the future. And it asks you to list your experiences in any organizations outside of Scouting in which you demonstrated leadership. And that doesn't mean you had to be president of the organization. Any role in which you demonstrated leadership qualifies, as does any position of responsibility. The requirement says list, so you don't need to go into great detail. We don't need pages and pages. 2 or 3 sentences per experience is sufficient. The second part of the statement should focus on your goals and ambitions for the future. Try to include something about your future career goals, your passions, and your personal life. If you hope to be a parent someday with a small army of kids, say so. So, regarding career aspirations, you don't need to be too specific here. For example, you could say, I've always felt a calling by the medical profession, so I'm considering majoring in biology. The bottom line, it's pretty hard to fail this requirement, unless you list something like mafia hitman or international drug smuggler. Number 7 is your board of review. For Star and Life, it was members of your troop committee, adults that you're very familiar with. For Eagle, it's going to be members of the District Eagle Board, people that are probably strangers to you. And finally, there's a category here that I called Other. This it's not really a requirement, but I'm trying to highlight a difference here. When you are ready to request advancement in rank, for Star and Life, it was informal communication with your unit advancement chairperson. You showed them your book. You said, I'm ready for my board of review for whatever. But for Eagle rank, you're actually going to submit an application with Daniel Webster Council. There's a portal where you can fill in some basic information, mostly contact information, and then upload your completed forms. And so back in the day, this was all done by hard copy, where you actually had to either mail something to the office or stop in person and drop it off, and that's gone away. It's 100% electronic now. And stay tuned, because the system right now could change a little bit. So if you have any questions, your district advancement chairperson is a really good resource and can answer those questions. So we have a prize question. Where does one go to find the requirements to be an Eagle Scout? Anybody? Yes?
The Scout book?
Yes, your Scout handbook.
So let me just say one thing about the prizes. There's 7 prizes throughout the 3 hours. We just kind of throw them out there. They're all easy. And you're gonna, if you win, like this young man, you come up here and you take one of these cards. So whoever answered correctly, please come up. Quick, let's go. Take this card, and at the end, you bring the card back, and you get a collector's version Hidden Valley mug from 2013. Okay?
Wow.
So it's very special. You can't get these anymore. They're collector's version.
I will just add that another good resource for the requirements is the Eagle application itself. Sometimes they do change, not often. If you ever have a question, something doesn't seem to match up, if your unit leadership can't answer it, your district advancement chairperson can help you. Thank you.
We've got the next one.
Oh,
You lucky
all
dog.
right. Lucky you.
If I could make one comment on the Eagle application, make sure you've got the right version. When the Citizenship and Society was added, there's a new version of the application. Make sure you've got the right version.
This segment is called Long Poles in the Tent, and it has to do with time management, because that's one of the biggest challenges to making Eagle, and especially the Eagle project. So instead of plunging headlong into all the specific principles of time management, which are numerous, I'm going to distill some of the key principles into the requirements with greatest emphasis on completing Eagle requirement number 5, and that's the service project. So there are 3 major phases to completion of requirement number 5. The conceptual phase, the approval phase, and then the planning and the execution. The conceptual phase can really start any time on your trail to Eagle. You don't have to wait until you're life ranked for this. You may belong to or be aware of an organization outside of Scouting that has specific needs or wants. Might need you again, Sandy. And you might be able to develop these into a good project. You might also come up with an original idea yourself and sell that idea to the beneficiary. For example, while he was watching a high school football game, one young scout in Bedford noticed that the flagpole at the far end of the field looked ridiculously small from the midfield bleachers. So he always felt that replacing that with a taller one would be a worthy Eagle project when the time came. Of course, you'll also want a warm feeling that your project ideas will be approved when the time comes. So pay attention to that segment of today's presentation. So the key takeaways are start early and educate yourself by attending a Life to Eagle seminar, which is what you're doing right now. The second phase is the approval phase. And the obvious question is, what's the best time to initiate it? In my opinion, that kind of depends on your personal situation. If you're the go-getter who earned life by age 13, is scouting your primary extracurricular activity? If either of those describes you, you might want to earn your additional 10 merit badges and fulfill your leadership position first, and then worry about getting your project approved and completed. Giving yourself that additional 6 months or a year during which you'll gain experience, maturity, and self-confidence will make completing your Eagle project requirement less stressful and more enjoyable. If, on the other hand, your advancement track is more gradual, perhaps due to other activities that compete for your time, you'll probably find yourself working on your merit badges, your troop leadership position, and your Eagle project concurrently, which isn't the end of the world, but will demand greater attention to time management, including personal reflection and honest self-assessment about your abilities and limitations. For some of you, being realistic might mean taking a semester off from a sport, a club, theater, or band. It might also mean reducing hours at a job or taking regular classes instead of AP classes. You and the people that love you know you best, and they're great resources for sorting this out. In any case, give yourself an Eagle project approval deadline of no later than your 17th birthday. Every month that you procrastinate adds more risk of running out of time due to stumbling blocks that life will throw at you. And FYI, most of those stumbling blocks wouldn't qualify for an Eagle rank time extension. And we're going to discuss those later in the program. Here's a sample of some of those stumbling blocks. Minor illnesses like cold or flu. District Eagle boards meet monthly, so even a short illness at the wrong time can set you back a month. Academic conflicts, PSATs, SATs, college visits. Extracurricular activities like travel sports, playoffs, tournaments, school clubs, social life. And finally, obtaining beneficiary approval. This can be a really big one. your Eagle project isn't a top priority for many of the adults whom you'll have to meet with. And furthermore, these adults may be away on business trips or family vacations just when you need to meet them, with them. No, back to the chart. So the takeaways for the approval phase are: adopt a realistic timeline for Eagle Rank and stick to it. Know thyself. Be honest about your abilities and your other commitments. Seek trusted advice. Keep the scope of your project realistic. The Eagle project is the only requirement that you have control over. And remember, size doesn't matter, so avoid the temptation to take on more than practical. And finally, expect the unexpected. You can't predict the unexpected, but you can plan for it. The third and final stage is the planning and execution phase. This phase begins the moment your project is approved by the District Eagle Board, and it ends the moment you obtain the final signature from the beneficiary. And when he does that, your project is accepted. As you'll hear many times today, it's your project, not your parents, not your Eagle coaches, and not the beneficiaries. Therefore, planning and execution are your responsibility. If you've learned anything by this point in scouting, it's the skill of delegating. The more tasks you delegate, the more you'll be able to provide specific answers to this key question at your final Eagle Board of Review. How did you show leadership? If you think about it, some of the most basic tasks can be delegated, such as making copies or bringing snacks for the workers. Break the project down into component parts. An excellent guide for doing this is the middle or project plan section of the Eagle Project Workbook. This section is optional for your use, but it's designed to bridge the gap between a rough idea and what's referred to as a shovel-ready project. For example, if your project is refurbishing a wooden fence that's fallen into disrepair, you'd expect to have distinct steps such as inspecting and evaluating which sections need replacement, procuring materials, repairing or replacing the broken sections, prepping the surface, and finally refinishing. Each step will require different skill sets, materials, and tools. Having a plan that defines each step and planning your workdays around them will help maximize the efforts of your workers. Establish a realistic timeline for planning and execution. Here's where your trusted advisors and your Eagle coach can be a valuable asset. Allow plenty of leeway in your schedule for the potential stumbling blocks of this phase, such as bad weather, seasonal limitations like muddy or frozen ground, availability of materials. Sometimes during hurricane season, plywood becomes in very scarce supply. And if your project relies on that, you might have a difficulty getting it. Availability of helpers. Consult the local school calendars and troop calendar. Fundraising. What if your first fundraiser doesn't raise enough funds? And your own family conflicts, things like driver's ed, vacations, weddings, reunions. Most parents can tell you which weekends won't be available for working on your project. And the final time management principle that I want to discuss may not apply to all of you, but it probably applies to some of you. Don't let perfection be the enemy of good enough. You're required to complete all the quantitative or measurable elements of an Eagle project, but it doesn't need to be qualitatively or artistically perfect. For example, a trail kiosk should have the basic dimensions and construction features that you proposed. But if there are a few places where there's some paintbrush marks showing, that's okay, as long as your project is functional and has a beneficial impact. So the time management takeaways for this phase are: delegate. This is a must to demonstrate that you showed leadership. Break the project down. Treat your overall project as a series of smaller ones. Have a realistic project timeline. Again, you can't predict the unexpected, but you can plan for it. And finally, don't let perfection become the enemy of good enough. Any questions? I think we have another prize question. If you are now a Life Scout, when is the best time to start your Eagle Service project? Yes?
After you complete like the other main requirements like merit badges and stuff.
Possibly, it depends. If you're short on time, if you're the type of person that has, made life rank, 15, you might want to start that concurrently. But if you're much younger and you have the time, it may benefit you to get those other requirements. But you mentioned the word making life rank, so that's the answer that we're looking for. You can always start thinking about a project before, but start the process going as soon as you earn life. He gets a card?
Yep,
Okay.
come on up.
And now I'd like to introduce Beth Dibble to talk about what is an Eagle project.
All right. Question of the day. There's lots of questions today here. I'm going to try. Jeff, I can't quite see how to do this. I'm a Mac person, so I apologize. Oh, okay.
If you can turn off that timer, Jeff, go for it.
Yeah, it's only on a couple slides.
Oh, okay. I don't know how it works.
I think it's here, up here somewhere, under maybe view. I'm trying to make it full screen so it's a little easier to see.
Yeah.
You know, they change the version every 3 minutes. It's hard to keep up.
There we go.
Hey, they're so technical. Excellent. All right. So, this is a big question. What is an Eagle project? So we're going to discuss some of the things that would be or won't be considered an Eagle project. So how do you pick one? When you get to that point, you've got life, or you're just before you're getting life, and you're thinking about, what do I want to do? Sometimes your head explodes because there's just too many things that you think of, or you don't know what you want to do. So to help you figure that out, what's the purpose of it? What's the purpose of an Eagle project? And that will guide you toward what could be a good project, what will be an acceptable project to the council. It's to show leadership, someone said this earlier, and give back to the community. So that means taking the trash out for your parents doesn't count as an Eagle project, because you're not giving back to the community. You're helping your mom and dad, but you're not helping the community. This is the boring statement from the workbook, but I'm just going to read it anyway. In addition to providing service and fulfilling part of the Scout Oath to help other people at all times, which we say at every meeting, right? One of the primary purposes of the Eagle Project is to demonstrate or hone or learn or develop leadership skills. That's why, as you pointed out earlier, somebody pointed out earlier, why this is so important, why this is so impressive to people who are in scouting and not in scouting. Because how many 15, 16, 17-year-old young people have taken charge of a project from start to finish? Not a lot of them. That's why this is such a big deal, and why it helps you become an adult and take on all the responsibilities of being an adult. And as we've heard earlier, project management is involved in this, and the fact that you take responsibility for this project, because you're the leader. The adults help. You're the leader. That's something you have to kind of keep in mind the whole time and make sure they know that, and we'll talk about that too. So how do you choose that project? This is based partly on common sense and partly on experience, having helped young people do this for quite a long time now, 25 years or so. What do you want to do? That's a good place to start. If you need an idea, some people have an idea from the time they're 10 years old. Someday when I'm at the right point, I want to do this for the town or for my church. Some people don't. You really don't know where to start. This is a good place to start. What do you want to do? In my experience, a scout that picks a project that has a component that's very personal to them. They want to give back to, say, the Little League in their town because they help. I had a young scout who had a really tough time at one point in their young life, and going to the Little League every week and working with the team and having great coaches really helped this young guy get through some really tough times at home. And he wanted, because of that, when he got to that point in his life, he wanted to give back and helped with the Little League. So that is a way you can motivate yourself. Are you already involved with an organization? A lot of this stuff's going to get repeated. So if you hear it at least once, we've done our job, okay? So if you're already involved in your church or your youth group or a club at school or something like that, you may see things that need to be done. Like was mentioned earlier, the flagpole at the football, not the stadium, the field. So you see that and you go, yeah, that's something I could look into. Maybe I can ask the principal about that. So again, the same thing, sports team, your church group or another organization, a town service group. Sometimes there are volunteer groups that work in town doing various things. You could maybe approach them and say, is there a project that you would like to do, but you don't have anybody to do it for you? That type of thing. So, and again, if you're interested or passionate about something, you're more likely to succeed. It's like anything. There are classes in school that you take because you have to take them. And you're like, oh, I'll get through this. But if it's something you're really interested in, right, you work harder at it usually. You really enjoy it. So if it's something that you really feel strongly about, you're more likely to do well because you're going to run into little problems. And I have never, ever, ever met an Eagle Scout candidate who never had a problem. The entire time they're working on stuff, they never had an issue, okay? It happens. There's always something. When those somethings happen, if you really have a personal interest in the outcome, you're more likely to be able to get over it and think of a way around the problem. So other ways to find a good project. Contact that local organization. Sometimes you don't know what you want to do, but you know you want to do it for this group. So give them a call. Sometimes they've got this like wish list in their drawer. If somebody came forward to me and said, hey, I need to do a thing, I need to volunteer. Do you have some things that you'd like me to do? And they practically fall over themselves with, yes, this would be great. We've been waiting for somebody to do this for a long time. Sometimes they even have some money set aside for that project. And that would help you with your fundraising because they already have money set aside. And that's okay to accept that money too, by the way. So go there maybe hoping they have an idea. If they don't, maybe you have some ideas. Have a couple. Always have a plan B. That's another major thing to keep in the back of your mind for anything to do with Eagle. Always have a plan B. Something's going to happen. Oh, well, we can't do it there, but we can do it over here. Don't, at the very beginning, don't narrow your choices too much because you might be disappointed. So have some ideas and go in to see them. Just remember, it's your project. You don't know. Sometimes you want to work for an organization. They're very happy to have a scout do a project for them. Sometimes if they've never worked with scouts before, they don't know what to expect. They don't realize it's a youth-led project. The leaders are there to help. The leaders are there, for safety purposes and whatnot. But the scout is the project. And the organization also can't come in at the last minute and say, I know I said you could do this, but I've totally changed my mind. No. This is your project. You're the leader. You're the person who makes most of the decisions. And other ways to find a good project, go online. The internet is a fabulous resource now. these are just two, it took me about 3 seconds to find these two images online. Back when the little libraries, they're called, were not that common. This scout did one at a park in his town. And this one I thought was really interesting. The scout went back to his elementary school saying he wanted to do something. And this teacher was teaching like 3rd graders or something math on an abacus. And they couldn't afford to get one for every student. The idea was for every student to have one at their desk. And so he figured out a way to make them. He and his team made enough abacuses, he's got a whole box there. And the teacher has her big one. So that's a really interesting, I personally love to see things that are a little different. And that's all I have for this. Does anyone have any questions? It's really just a general kind of think outside the box kind of statement I'm making here. So just don't narrow your thing into thinking it has to be a bench or it has to be a path somewhere. Yes?
So the BSA cannot be the beneficiary for the project?
Correct. We'll talk about that later, but yes, that's very true. It can be the Girl Scouts. It can't be the Boy Scouts. Yeah. There is a difference there. So as much as I'm sure the folks here at Camp Concord would love to have people come up, that's why they have work days. People could come volunteer in the OA and so forth. But that's a very good question to start off with. Anything else? Okay. Again, you'll hear some of this stuff over and over and over again. So now we have Mr. Berman, who will talk about what is an acceptable legal project. So here you go. You're going to have some of your answers now.
Good morning. So we've learned about how to generate project ideas. Now we're going to find out about what is actually acceptable. So an Eagle project must benefit some kind of civic or nonprofit organization. There's lots of them. If you really think about it, in your town or in the surrounding areas, there's lots of organizations that are nonprofit. It has to provide a significant service to the community. It can't be a work day to clean up a park or something. There has to be some kind of significant service to the community. It can't benefit one person or one family. It has to benefit, again, the whole community or group. It has to present an opportunity for planning. And, of course, development and leadership for you. The whole idea of the Eagle Project is to demonstrate your leadership. Of course, it has to be done after you become a Life Scout. And, of course, that the board, the Eagle Board, has approved it. But I've seen scouts who come to me when they turn star and said, oh, I want to do my Eagle Project. No, can't do it. You have to be a Life Scout. And it has to demonstrate your leadership skills. There has to be some kind of way that you're going to demonstrate you're going to lead this thing. To your point, it can't benefit BSA. The council, districts, units, properties can't do that. It can't be just a fundraiser. You just can't raise money. It can't be routine labor, repairing things or maintenance of existing structures. And I know that this gets into a gray area because a lot of times there has been projects that have been approved that somebody might think, oh, that's just repairing something. Well, it's a little bit more than that. It's a little bit more than just repairing something. You can't do it with another Eagle Scout. You can't pair up with somebody. It has to be something that you're solely doing. Again, you're demonstrating your leadership skills running the project. Now let's talk about acceptable. Let's give some examples. Replacing the back deck and stairway at a VFW. Yeah, it's just not a routine. You're just not repairing a couple of different things. You're actually replacing a complete structure. Clear indicator you need a building permit. Okay? There's a lot more involved in just taking a couple boards off and replacing it. Straightening and repainting a wrought iron fence around a cemetery. No. It's an existing structure and you're just fixing it. You're not replacing it. You're not changing it. You're just straightening it out. Again, it's an existing structure that you're just putting back into the same shape. Transforming the back area of a church that has a seasonal wetland into a permanent defined pond with well-defined paths and landscaping. Yes or no? Yes, it's a well-defined project. You're changing something that's there existing, and you're defining something that's now something that's identifiable. Of course, if you have to, you might be putting in a little walkway over a stream or way area. You'll have to get some permits from the DES. There's a clear definition of a walkway that has to be created. There has to be signage and maybe benches that have been done. I know that some scouts I've dealt with have actually done this type of thing at some of the local camps. They put in walkways that didn't exist. And if it's just, it's a no if it's just clearing some brushes off existing paths. If the trail already exists, if you're just cleaning it up, it's really just maintaining what already exists. So what I would say is communicate. You have an idea, find out if it's going to be acceptable. There's no reason you can't communicate with your scoutmaster, with your coach, or with the district Eagle board and say, hey, I've got an idea, this is what I'd like to do. Is this something that's acceptable? So, and I guess we have another prize question. So if we were to try and go to the town of Manchester, the city of Manchester, and we were going to clear off their park, one of their parks, would that be an acceptable Eagle project? Go ahead.
No,
Why not?
because you're just repairing it. You're not like building something new.
Okay, what would be an acceptable one?
If you're like build a path in that park with like a pond or benches or something like that.
That's true. Come on up. If you were to clear a path, put in a bench, clear an area that's going to be defined for some specific purpose, that would be acceptable. But if it's an existing park and you're just clearing things off, that's just routine maintenance. Okay, Jeff, you're up.
All right. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you. So we're going to talk about whether or not a project will be approved. So this follows right along with what Mr. Berman talked about. I'm going to share a few slides on what the Eagle Board is going to use as criteria for answering that question. And then we'll have a very interactive part where it'll be up to you to make a decision on whether a project proposal would be approved or not. All right? Once you have a project idea, you've got to develop that a little bit to create a project proposal. And it's the proposal, not just an idea, that has to get reviewed and approved by the Eagle Board. All right, so we're going to first talk about how does the Eagle Board decide whether to approve a proposal, and then we'll give you a chance to decide about some proposals. So here's some of the criteria that the board has to use: helping other people, developing leadership skills, project management skills, and taking responsibility for a significant project. All right, so some of the criteria that we use in evaluating a project. The impact, is it going to be a significant benefit to the beneficiary? Are you going to have significant opportunity to develop leadership? And can we see that there's been planning and development for the project? So there's five tests that have to be met that we have to evaluate in order to approve the project. These are right out of the workbook, and you can read them there. The bottom line here is the one that always comes to my mind. Right? Is this a project that's going to make it easy for the Eagle Board to say yes when you come back for your board of review? Right? You don't want that to be a difficult decision, neither do we. All right, so we're talking about requirement number 5, and it's got a lot of different parts. It reads just 1 or 2 lines. But if you break it up, there really are a whole bunch of different parts, and every one of them has to be met. Right, so read through it carefully, word by word, and make sure that you're going to be able to meet all of those parts in your proposal and in the project itself. The idea of sufficient opportunity comes up a couple times when we look at those criteria. And I think of that in three different dimensions. There's time, time that you are going to invest, time that your helpers are going to invest in this project. The number of people who are going to be involved. Right? If you're going to provide leadership to 1 or 2 people, that's different than providing leadership to 20 or 30 people. So the leadership skills are going to be different in those different cases. That doesn't say that the first one works and the second one doesn't, but you've got to figure out what skills are going to be required and how are you going to demonstrate leadership with the people involved. And then there's the complexity of the project. Are you going to send a rocket to the moon? Or are you going to move a pile of dirt from here to there? Right? And so if you think of those three different dimensions, that gives you a cube. You can picture a cube. And that's the space that you have to work with to demonstrate leadership. Right? They don't have to be, the cube doesn't have to be big in all three dimensions, but probably at least 2 of them have got to be significant. Right? And if they're not, you don't have enough space, you don't give yourself enough room to demonstrate leadership and provide benefit to the beneficiary. And the project just isn't big enough to be a successful Eagle project. All right, so that's how the Eagle Board has to evaluate a project. Now it's up to you to decide. So this is going to be a very interactive part. Can everybody say yes?
Yes.
Can everybody say no?
No.
Can everybody say maybe?
Maybe.
All right. So the first one, organize a blood drive in town to be held in the school gymnasium. Yes, no, maybe?
No.
Generally no. Right. Not enough, that space that you have in that cube isn't going to be big enough to demonstrate leadership. Not enough opportunity. All right. Same answer is going to be for a food drive or a book drive or a clothing drive or an eyeglass drive. It's got the same kind of issues as a blood drive in general. You might be able to enhance that kind of project. Use that as a starting point and develop that into a bigger project that's going to be suitable for an Eagle project. Installing erosion control on some of the pads here at Camp Carpenter. No, why not? Right, it's got the wrong beneficiary. Okay, so let's fix that problem. Let's do it for a town park. Install 2 8-foot erosion control barriers on a trail in town. Yes. I would say no. If you're going to put 2 8-foot logs across a trail and dig a ditch, that's very small. Is your opportunity for demonstrating leadership going to be big enough? Probably not, if that's all you're going to do. Organize a road rally to raise money for the senior center.
No.
No, why not? It's a fundraiser. Any other reason? Safety and liability issues. Right, safety has to be considered, and road rallies, depending on who's driving, people get too competitive. Okay. Could be risky. Right, writing a book on the history of your community. No?
Yes.
I heard a couple yeses, a couple no's. Why yes?
Because it's helping out your community for like a long period of time.
Okay, helping your community over a long period of time. Why no?
It doesn't give leadership to others?
Leadership to others. Right, a very limited opportunity. It could be a one-person project. And planning and development and leadership could be an issue. Designing a wheeled storage box for the school to store troops. Oops, I've got too far ahead of myself. Oh, well.
I guess no.
You guess no. All right, why not?
Inappropriate beneficiary?
Very good. Excellent. Yeah, I wish we had another prize. Documenting and geotagging local hiking trails.
Yes.
Yes. Maybe. Probably yes. You got to make sure you've got leadership opportunities. So again, not just a one-person job. And what's the deliverable to the beneficiary? How does the beneficiary know that you're done? How do you know that you're done? And as long as you can answer those kind of things, then the answer would be yes. And you could define it in such a way that the answer is no. So you've got to answer those questions for the Eagle Board. A house-to-house loose coin collection.
No.
No. It can't be a fundraiser. Roadway cleanup around the whole town. No. Why not? Yeah, I think I heard all the different pieces there. Safety concerns would need to be addressed, and it's more of a maintenance or routine labor kind of a task. It's not to say that it's not a good project, but it's not an Eagle project. A new sign for a house of worship. Yes. And again, that you'd have to define that in such a way that you've got leadership opportunity. You can't just be a fundraiser. You're going to buy a sign and have it installed. Make sure you answer all those other aspects, but probably the answer would be yes for that one. A wheelchair ramp for a handicapped person in town.
No, maybe.
I heard a lot of no's. I heard one maybe. I like the maybe. The obvious answer is no, except if you're able to develop the project and define it in such a way that you've got a suitable beneficiary. Right? Maybe there's a community service agency in town who would like to do that, but they don't have the resources. They don't have the people or the money or the funds or the skills to make that happen. So if the beneficiary is that community service agency, you might be able to define the project in such a way that it meets all those tests. So on the surface, the answer might be no, but if it's important to you, don't give up on it right away. Just develop it a little bit further. Composing, arranging, and performing music for the opening day at a house of worship.
No.
No. Any other answers?
Yes.
All right, we got one yes and a bunch of no's.
Someone had to say it.
Somebody had to say it, right. If you develop it in such a way that there's opportunity for planning, development, and leadership, right? You can compose a piece of music, you can find the performers who are going to be with you, set up the rehearsals, arrange the performance venue and time and refreshments. You might be able to develop that into a good project. If it's just going to be a solo performance by the composer, no.
No.
No. I gotta fix that for next time. Why not? There's a couple more reasons that aren't up there. Yeah.
It might be a fundraiser.
Might be a fundraiser. Yeah. If it's something that you've done every year, over several years, then it's not something that you've started after you were after you earned life.
There's no leadership.
Right. And right, being a helper is not being a leader. And yeah, so if it's something you do annually over several years as a helper, yeah, the answer would be no. Constructing a bridge over a river or a stream.
Yes.
Yes. Yes, and sorry.
I was going to say, as long as it's for the town and not for your grandfather.
Yes. Yep, it's got to have a suitable beneficiary. And watch out for wetland concerns. If you're going to have to get approvals, that just like the Eagle Board meets monthly, the boards that are responsible for approving that, first you got to find out who they are, and they might meet quarterly. So you've got to make sure you've got enough time to get all those permits. It might take 2 or 3 visits to the Wetlands Commissions to get something approved. So yes, but watch out for the timing on a project like that. Mapping the graves in a town cemetery. Yes. Make sure it hasn't been done already. We had a scout in our district who came with a proposal to map out the graves in a cemetery, and we had a couple of questions for him at the proposal review. And so I went to look some things up online afterwards and found out that it had already been done. So the scout hadn't done enough research to find out that he was proposing to do something that had already been done. So there's no benefit to the beneficiary. Building a new sign for town property.
No.
Yes. Rebuilding or improving an entrance to a community building.
No.
I got a no, a couple no's and a couple yeses. So the right answer might be, it depends. Make sure it's not just a maintenance project, a maintenance repair project. It's got to be more significant than that. And watch out for requirements for building codes and permits that might be required. Who's required to get building permits for an Eagle project? Yeah. The scout. Any other answers?
The beneficiary?
The beneficiary. So the beneficiary is responsible for getting the permit. The scout is responsible for making sure that gets done. Is that the difference between those things clear?
Ownership.
Ownership, right. Building a new dugouts for baseball fields. Yeah, that's a great project.
No.
Does a project have to, oh, I gotta fix that for next year. Do you have to have a lasting physical deliverable to the beneficiary?
No.
No. Do you have to have a deliverable to the beneficiary?
Yes.
Yes. One of my favorite projects was somebody who did a dinner and game night for the Veterans Home. And the only lasting deliverable was the memories of the people who attended. They all had a great time, and it was a good project, lots of complexity in planning and organizing it, but there was no physical deliverable after it was done. So how did you do? Did you get most of the answers right? Yes? No? They've all gone quiet again. All right, next up is Jeff Town to talk about getting organized for Eagle Project. Yes?
Sorry, a quick question. Could there be a situation in which your initial project for Eagle Board of Review approves the project,
Yep.
the scout does the project right to the proposal, right to the letter, and then another Eagle Board of Review says, no, this falls into a different category and negates all the work that's been done?
No. So once a proposal has been approved, it's up to the Eagle Board of Review to determine whether you have done the project that was approved, but they can't say it's not a suitable project. You can't, the first board might have made a mistake, but you can't take that out on the scout at their Board of Review.
Great, thank you.
Good question. Yes. And I go back to one of my first slides. Your job is to make it easy for the Board of Review to say yes, so make sure you've met all the criteria. So that kind of thing doesn't come up. All right, getting organized. Whose responsibility is it to get organized for an Eagle project? The scout, right. It's not your parents, not your coach, your advisor, your scoutmaster, the beneficiary, all the people who are going to help you, not your liaison on the Eagle Board, it's you. And you can expect that all those other people might not be as well organized for your project as you would like them to be. Because you've got a lot more invested in this project than any of them do. Okay, what is it that needs to get organized? Well, there's a long list of things, and we're not going to be able to go through them all. You can use this as sort of a checklist later, and most of those things are listed in the workbook as well. So there's a lot of different things that are going to need to get organized. Is there anything missing from this list? one of the most important things. Yeah,
Building permits, if like.
building permits, that's important. That's not one I had in mind. What I was thinking about is your own time, yourself. And all the information, the workbook is a great tool for getting yourself organized as long as you use it. And managing your own time is a critical piece. All right, when do you need to get organized? Right from the very beginning. When you're thinking about your project, getting ready to do your proposal, whenever you think or hear yourself say, I'll remember that, write it down. Trust me, it will pay off by the time you're done working on your project and come to your board of review. I love this quote from Mark Twain, and it's absolutely true for Eagle projects. Have a place for everything and keep the thing somewhere else. It just happens all the time. Write it down in your workbook, and then you'll have the information where you need it. Being organized really is following the Scout Law. It's helpful and courteous to your beneficiary, your donors, all the people who are going to help you, and the Eagle Board. And all of those people are people that you want on your side. So be courteous to them and keep yourself organized. Being organized is thrifty. If you're disorganized, you're going to have the wrong materials, too much or not enough. You're going to have to make extra runs to the hardware store. You're going to have wasted materials, wasted time. And be kind to yourself. If you're not organized, you're going to create a lot of extra stress for yourself that you don't really need to do. As you're working on your proposal, writing up your project, executing the project, and coming to your board review. It's important to get organized. Being organized really is being prepared. You can have a well laid out plan and something is going to go not quite as you planned. But if you've got a good plan prepared, then it'll be much easier to adjust that plan as you go along. Right? If you don't have a good plan and then something goes different than what you sort of had in your mind, it's going to be harder to adjust your plan. Right. How to get organized, there's a lot of different tools that you have. Put your Eagle Scout workbook in a 3-ring binder. You can add pages to it as things come up. You can keep a set of files on your PC or on your phone. Documents, spreadsheets, make sure they're backed up one way or another. Even if they're in your workbook and your workbook gets misplaced somewhere, it's good to have a copy of that on your computer or on your phone. All right? And next up is one of the most important parts of the day, a 10-minute break.
So now I am going to talk about the Eagle Coach. We mentioned the Eagle Coach in passing. It's something that's been around for, 10 years or so maybe. We didn't always have an Eagle Coach. We're going to talk about what an Eagle Coach is and what an Eagle Coach does and what they can do for you. That's the main thing. So, anybody have any ideas what an Eagle Coach is or can be or should be? Yes?
Somebody who mentors the scout in the Eagle project.
Yeah, yeah. That's a really good definition of that. There we go. An adult who advises and counsels the Eagle candidate through the process. Okay? So, this Eagle Coach can do the following. Provide information and answer questions. So depending on what your project is, may make a difference in who you choose to be your Eagle Coach. All right? Identify barriers and, if needed, guide you around them. So if you're going to do a project that's, building a bridge, say, and there is an adult in your troop who's an engineer or works construction and has a lot of expertise in this area, that might be somebody you might want to consider for your Eagle Coach. And guide you to a BSA compliant project. Again, any adult helping you in this project should be aware of the BSA guidelines. What is allowed, what isn't allowed, the fact that you're the leader of the project and that coach is not the leader of the project. This person is usually involved throughout the entire process. So that may also have a bearing on who you pick to be your Eagle coach. If there's this adult that's fabulous, is a great person, and yet they miss half the meetings because they're traveling, or sometimes they work an off shift or something, and that's maybe somebody you don't necessarily want as your Eagle coach because they're not going to be around as much when you may need them. You may need to talk to them. It also can help if this is someone you've worked with before or has worked with your troop before, and you kind of know that you get along with them pretty well, because they're not going to be your partner, but they're going to be maybe your chief advisor and somebody that also knows how the Eagle process works. So these are all things to consider. Where can you get your Eagle coach from? Any ideas? Or who could be your Eagle coach? Sometimes units have 2 or 3 adults that tend to be the person that's an Eagle coach. They like doing it, which is helpful, but the Eagle coach is something they like doing, being an Eagle coach. Or you can suggest your own, but not from your immediate family. Say this with me, please. Not from your immediate family. You want to avoid this at all costs, okay? It's going to be, you're going to have issues on occasion anyway, especially with your parents. Parents love you. They want you to succeed. A lot of times you're going to be like, down, Dad, down, down. This is my project. You don't want to hurt their feelings, so just don't go there. Just don't go there. Trust me. It's very important to know that the Eagle coach cannot approve your project. The district Eagle board does that, the project board. They can't grant permissions. They can't say, that's fine, the Scoutmaster will sign that application. They can't necessarily say that. Or say, oh, I know the town will approve this. Don't worry about it. The Eagle coach must be registered and have current YPT training. So if there's an adult, for whatever reason, because of a special skill they have, that you really would like to be your Eagle coach, but they aren't a registered scouter, they would have to become one and also take YPT before they can be your Eagle coach. That's very, very important. So if it's someone who's already in the troop or another troop and has these qualifications, you're good to go. And one final question. This is my bonus question. I'm going really fast, I know. What are the main purposes, again, we're going back to this overall idea, what are the main purposes of an Eagle Scout service project? There are several, but I'll give it to the first person. Yes?
To help your community in a way that doesn't involve fundraising.
That's kind of what the project is about, but what's the main purpose? That's the outcome, what's the purpose?
You give leadership and benefit the community?
Leadership is one of those words I was looking for, so yes, here you go. Leadership. The others are learn about project management and taking that responsibility, because you're the leader, so you take responsibility for the project. And I just did that. So now we are back to Mr. Town, talking about paperwork. No, paperwork.
Your Eagle Scout Service Project Workbook is something we've mentioned here and there this morning. It's the single most valuable resource that you're going to have as you're working on your proposal and on your project. The requirement says you must use this workbook for developing your proposal and in the execution of your project. Make sure you've got the right workbook from the official source. Make sure you've got the current version of the workbook. It was updated just a couple months ago. So the current version is February 2023. And it doesn't say it's not going to change in a couple months. It might. So make sure you get it from the right source. And the URL that's here, that will be the official current version of the workbook. So it's at scouting.org, and there's a long URL there. If you do a Google search for the Eagle Workbook, you get a bunch of results, go to the one that is www.scouting.org. Or if you go to nhscouting.org, under the Life to Eagle resources that we talked about before, you'll find a link there, but that link goes back to the workbook at the scouting.org site. If you do a Google search, there's a lot, you'll get a lot of results. There's a lot of outdated or homegrown versions out there, so make sure you get the current official version of the workbook. Is there a question? Yes?
How do you find this slideshow?
At nhscouting.org, if you click the More button at the top, and the top item is Advancements. And if you click on there, you'll find a couple pages, and it'll be in there. Okay? Yeah, and this is the URL right at the top of this slide. There's a whole bunch of resources there, including the application and the workbook right in the middle here. And the training, I guess I did this last week because today's training is now at the top of that list. I think there's two important things you have to do with this workbook. Only two. That should be easy enough to remember. The first one is to read it. Read the whole thing, starting at page 1, ending on the last page, and everything in between. And the second thing you have to do is follow it. Do what it says on every page. Right? The proposal is at the beginning, and the signature page for the proposal has on it a candidate's promise that says, I have read this entire workbook. I can't count the number of times a scout has come to have their proposal reviewed and they haven't signed this promise because they haven't read it. We had at least one scout come without a signature there and come back the following month after he had taken the time to read the whole workbook because he hadn't done it. So do that before you come to your proposal review and everybody will be happier, right? All right, and work on your project. Don't begin work on your project, including raising funds or gathering materials until the proposal is approved. And it's very easy to make that mistake. And if you do that, the remedy is to start over with a different project. You don't want to be there. So don't start too early. Start at the beginning of the workbook. Page 1, page 2, page 3 all have very useful information. It tells you how the Eagle Board is going to evaluate your proposal. That's where all the slides from my previous section that I did, all that information came out of these first few pages of the workbook. And remember to read the requirement carefully. You'll find that printed in the workbook. Read it carefully. Make sure your proposal is going to meet all the parts of that requirement. Page 3 talks about the purpose of the project. A couple parts to that. Service to the community, service to the beneficiary, and a bunch of different suitable beneficiaries and some that are explicitly not the beneficiary. Somebody was asking a question during the break about a trail through what might be privately owned property, but it's a trail that's there for the benefit of the community. It's open to the community for the benefit of the community. So, you know, that specific exception is there in the workbook. Read the workbook and you'll find answers to the question like that. So service to the beneficiary, and part 2 of what your project must do, give yourself opportunity to plan, develop, and lead a significant project. Go back to that cube I was talking about with number of people and time and complexity. Give yourself a big enough space, a big enough opportunity to provide leadership and give a significant benefit to the beneficiary. Right? The project should be something that you care about. You're going to spend a lot of time and energy working on it. You might as well choose something that you're going to care about. There's a bunch of things that your project cannot be, and all those things are, I think we've talked about most of these things. Routine labor, maintenance can't be shared. Safety has to be taken into consideration. The four main parts of the workbook, the proposal, that has to be approved. You got to fill that in. Just follow the steps in there. Answer all the questions that are there. You don't need any more than that, but you need everything that's asked for there. The project plan is an extremely useful tool. It used to be required. It's not anymore, but it's still a very, very, very useful tool. I highly recommend it. There's a fundraising application. It's different than the fundraising application that your troop would use for a unit fundraiser. So use that application if you need to raise funds. And then the project final report is a section that's required, and you'll need that for your board review. So fundraising application may or may not be required depending on if you need to raise funds. A bunch of other information in there that you need to share with other people who are involved in your projects. There's something there for parents and guardians. There's something there for unit leaders and coaches and beneficiaries. Make sure you share that information with them because not everybody understands what an Eagle project is all about. And if you're working with somebody who doesn't understand what you're trying to do, they might not be so helpful to you. All right, the proposal, we've talked about that before, needs to be approved, and all the requirements for that are in the workbook. Fundraising, all the requirements for that are a little bit different than other fundraising projects. Make sure you follow the guidelines that are there in the workbook. The Daniel Webster Council has specific guidelines requiring fundraising. It first came up in the context of GoFundMe pages or online fundraising, but you know the policy is that youth members shall not be permitted to solicit money for the BSA, for the troop, for an Eagle project. And the Eagle Board will not approve a fundraising plan that says, I'm going to ask a bunch of people for money. It's just, it violates the charter of the BSA. The project plan is a tool to help you, very useful. I highly recommend it. It doesn't have to be signed off by anybody. Yes?
So can you explain if a Eagle Scout candidate needed to raise money for their project, how would they do that appropriately?
Yes. Okay, you can get discounts on materials or donations of materials. That's a I'm not quite sure where that line is drawn, where it is, but you can't solicit money. You can get money for value, right? So you can do a car wash, you can do a spaghetti supper, you can sell product, but it's got to be value. You know, there's got to be some value to somebody who's giving you money. You can't just say, please, I need money because I'm a nice guy, or I'm going to do something useful. You can't do that.
And I think I read something online that said when you fundraise for Eagle Project, you're fundraising for your organization, for the school, the community center. You're not fundraising for yourself or your troop.
Yes, very good point. And in our district, if a scout is going to use a poster or a flyer, we make a special point. The flyer has to say, you know, this is a car wash for St. James Church. It's not a car wash for John's Eagle Project. Right? You can mention that in the fine print, but the fundraising is for the beneficiary. Right. Good question. Yes?
So I commonly hear that mom and dad can write a check for this if you need to, but that goes against what I'm hearing from you right now. So like as far as money, you know, we try to So I'm scoutmaster for my troop. I try to say, just in the spirit of fundraising, you want to go out and organize a fundraiser and really put the work in. But then I hear other people
Yes.
like, well, yeah, mom and dad can just write a check if you need to, and that negates what we're trying to do here, in my opinion.
Yes, so that's an excellent question. And there is a place where you can find the answer to that. Anybody want to guess where you could find the answer to that question?
The book.
In the workbook, exactly. And in there you'll find a statement that the family can provide funding, the unit can provide funding, the beneficiary can provide funding, and the scout can provide funding without a fundraising application.
I'll just add, sometimes it's difficult to do all the leadership for the project itself, but if you do a fundraiser, whatever leadership effort is involved in that certainly counts towards.
No, I guess that's what I'm saying. The fundraising effort is what is part of that leadership. But
be.
if mom says, here's $2,000, honey, you know, that's, but I mean, yes, it's approved, it's allowed, but did you really, I mean, it just didn't seem like much work went into that, in my opinion.
Yeah, so if, I mean, my personal view, if the rest of the project is big enough, if you got leadership opportunity and sufficient benefit to the community, then fundraising is not necessary, right? Even if the project requires funds, fundraising is not a necessary part of an Eagle project. And in my view, and in a lot of people's view, it's preferred not to have to do fundraising. A perfectly good Eagle project requires no fundraising at all.
Okay.
Project report is one of the later sections in the workbook, and that's a required section. Gets completed after you've done all the other work on your project, and it's got to be signed off and submitted to the board of review with signatures. And that can be submitted online. So a prize question, where can you find the Eagle Service Project workbook? There's two places, so somebody's got both answers. You were the first hand I saw.
Scouting.org.
That's one of them. You know the other one?
And New Hampshire Scouting.org.
NHScouting.org, right. Okay, come on up. Good.
Jim, can I just add one thing?
Sure.
You spoke to it, but in the workbook, it's towards the back. I wish they'd put it right behind the proposal. There's a single page document, and I forget the exact title, but it's information for the beneficiary. It's just telling them if they're not familiar with Eagle projects, what it's all about and what the scout is supposed to be doing, what his or her responsibilities are, just to give them some idea of where to draw the line and help define things for them. So when you go to the beneficiary, I highly recommend you make a copy of that and give that to the beneficiary.
Very, very good point. Yeah. How many of you have done Eagle projects before? How many of you have been beneficiaries for Eagle projects before? Right, so you might not know exactly what it means to be a beneficiary or what's expected of you. Right? And if you don't help your beneficiary, they're not going to be able to help you as effectively as they might. So it's a very good point. Okay, another quiz. There's two things you should do with your workbook. Oh man, I gotta. Yeah. Okay. What are the two things you should do with your workbook?
You should read everything in it and you should fill it out.
Right. Read it and follow it. And one more question. What parts of the workbook are always required?
The project proposal and the project report.
Right. The proposal right at the beginning and the report right at the end. And fundraising application may or may not be required, and the plan is just very useful. All right, next up is Mr. Berman.
Okay. So we've come to the point where we're now prepared, we've selected our project, we've got an acceptable project, we've filled out our proposal, we're prepared to go in front of the board and get approval. So, it's an exciting time, don't be nervous, they're there to help you. It may be people that you know or don't know, but they're there just to understand what you're going to try and do, and they're going to ask hopefully some intelligent questions about what the criteria is, how did you develop it, and what's going to be involved and how you're going to demonstrate leadership. So as we noted, you're going to complete the proposal section of the workbook. You're going to look at requesting a review of that based upon the guidance that the board will have to follow on approving it. One of the things, and it was harder during COVID, but now you should always understand, you can't, if a board meets on the first day of the month, you can't come to the last day of the previous month and say, I want to be on your board. You got to give the board some time to schedule you, because there may be some other people. So, right here we say 7 to 14 days, 1 to 2 weeks, but it really depends upon what your district has in front of it at that point. So, communication. Your Scoutmaster, your coach should be talking to the board. You've contacted the board yourself. They should be able to tell you, you know, if you're going to be on the schedule, what's going to go on. Prior to the appointment, this is very important. Make sure you have all the signatures. I can't tell you how many times we've had a scout come in front of the board, and the first thing I say is, I'd like to see your originals, I want to see your signatures. And they're always missing something. Yes,
What
JT?
are the signatures?
The signatures are the scout signature, the unit leader's signature, the chair, the troop chair signature, and the beneficiary signature. There is one other space for a signature, but that would be filled out by the board once they approve it. Okay. The other thing I note here is on the fundraising form. If you are going to do fundraising, have the form filled out and signed, and there are signatures there. Okay? Obviously the beneficiary and the unit leader, or I think it's the unit leader, has to sign that form. Many times, again, we've had scouts come in front of the board, and we say, okay, you're going to do some fundraising. They go through all the details of the fundraising, and then we say, okay, well, where's your fundraising form? And they don't have it filled out. And it's not just for the board's benefit, it's for the beneficiary's benefit to understand what you're going to be doing, so that they understand what you're going to be doing for them. And as it was pointed out, your fundraising for the beneficiary, noting that if you raise $1,000 and you only use $800, that other $200 that you didn't use goes to the beneficiary. At the meeting, typically they can be very casual, but we'd like you to show up in uniform. You want to have a very structured meeting. Introduce yourself, introduce the people you've had. We're going to ask you to describe your project. You can bring props. We have people who have brought post boards, pictures, samples, demonstrations of what they're going to be doing. If they're going to be building something, samples of pictures of what they're going to do. We're going to talk about, the board will ask to demonstrate how are you going to show leadership, how are you going to execute the project. We're going to try and get some clarification about things. And one of the things we want to do is this project practical? You know, are you going to build something that is within your ability? We don't want you to expand your scope. We don't want you to go outside your abilities. If you feel you can handle a specific thing and your beneficiary is pushing you for something else, you need to stick to your guns and just stay with the scope that's been approved. It's noted that the scout may look at this as an interrogation. We're going to give you the third degree, but it's not. We want you to succeed. We don't want you to go over and above what you think you can do. And we want you to understand that the limitations and the criteria and the control is up to the scout. After the project is presented, a lot of boards will have the scout and the coach step out, and the committee will talk about the project. There should be really not a lot of questions, just a criteria to ensure that the criteria meets what the district and what council and what BSA needs it to follow. The scout and the coach would be invited back in, and approval would be given. We'd sign off on your proposal, and we talk about maybe there's some things that we thought about that you really should think about. You know, how long is it going to take to get a building permit? Have you thought about that in your timeline? How are you going to recruit people? Okay. One of the other things we talk about is if you're building something especially, how are you going to have it recognized as an Eagle project by a Boy Scout? A lot of times people forget you got to put a plaque on there or some kind of sign or something to show that it was done by BSA. Keeping records. A lot of times we'll have a scout come to us and they'll say, okay, we're all ready to go. And they'll say, okay, have you recorded all your time you spent? And they said, no. And we said, the moment you start planning for your Eagle project is the moment you start recording things. You get a book, digital tab, whatever, however you're going to record all your time. The time you've spent planning it, talking to people, investigating things, whatever it is. Even the time that you spend at the board getting the approval is time spent on your project. And you also have to understand about man hours. If you go in front of a board with your coach and you spend a half hour and there's 3 people on the board, that means there's a half hour of time spent by every person in that meeting. And so all that time has to be recorded as spent onto your board. So, again, the Eagle Board wants us to succeed. There's no question. They're there just to learn what you've done and to make sure that you're going to be successful in doing it to the best of your ability. After it's presented, we'll go through that. So there is a view through the planning of the project, things that you can think about in terms of the steps that you have to take in order to make this project successful. Plan out materials if you need materials, whatever those materials are. There's tables in there and questions that are asked that would help you think about the things you have to do in the planning part of it. Planning is all part of the project management aspect of this. Also note that plan extra things. Water, nourishment, you're going to have a full work day. You have to plan that kind of time in. Weather is also a certain thing that you have to think about, especially if you're doing something outdoors. Plan for the possible alternates. You know, if you're putting in a post and you run into rock in the ground, what are some of the things that you might have to plan additionally or around that, okay? You have resources. You have resources. You have adults that are working on it. You have your scout, your coach. You have your scoutmaster. You also have the beneficiary, okay? If you run into an issue, talk to all these people. Find out some of the things that you need to change. Fundraising. After the board has approved it, it's part of the planning. You have to plan through the fundraising. You're going to do a car wash. Where are you going to do it? What kind of tools do you need? How are you going to recruit people? And when are you going to do it? You know, I know people who have done bake sales at churches. They have a big like Easter service, and then right after the Easter service, they have a bake sale. And of course, people who go to church become very hungry. So it's a natural lead-in into that. Maintain a project log. We've talked about this. I want to emphasize it again. Take pictures. I've always said to people, take lots of pictures. You don't need thousands of pictures, but just take certain pictures. Have someone assigned to taking pictures during the execution of the project. Dates, people, hours per person, or man hours as we call it. Write notes down. It can all be part of the log of how your project is executed. This information, these notes that you take, will help you tell the story and will help you do the final project report. And issues that come up, if there's changes, if there's challenges, please write that down. Also write down what went well. You know, if something went well, just make a note of it, okay? So what went well, what were the challenges, and what changes had occurred, and how did you manage those changes? Managing those changes is a clear definition of leadership. When you have changes, try to resolve them within the project. Again, it could be something simple as having to adjust the construction of something, move something a little bit. There may be something that's impractical that you thought would work but didn't. If it's a major change, even if it's a minor change, talk to your coach, talk to your scoutmaster, talk about it. If it changes the character of the project, you then have to go back to your board contact and discuss with them, well, we couldn't do what we wanted to do, we had to change it. Minor changes should contact the liaison, which they can typically approve. It's a major change. You were going to build a sign, and there's a sign that's existing, then you have to go back and change it. Now, as somebody pointed out, somebody was going to map out a cemetery. Well, they found out it was done. Well, that would be a major change. You'd have to do something else. As was noted, and we'll emphasize here again, the scout, the parent, the scoutmaster, crew advisor, Eagle coach, or mentor are not allowed to approve project changes. That can only come from the board. Okay? So please keep that in mind. You don't want to go in front of the board and they look at your proposal and they look at your project report and they see clear major differences in the two of them. We have had that happen. You know, we've had people who have made changes in between, and there's a report that usually is generated. But don't be that person. Any changes, log up the change. There's this part of the report where you can write down what the change was. Put it in your notebook. Okay. If there's a change that has to occur, get from your board liaison a written note. It could be an email, a letter, something to document what had happened and what had to change. I remember several years ago, a scout came to us and he had to have a change. That he was doing something at an organization's facility and he had to have a change done. He got a letter from the organization. He went to the board member and he had all his paperwork all together documenting why there had to be a change, which was great. And attach it to your final report, okay? Again, we don't want to see major changes. Is there any questions? Documentation is the biggest thing, okay? And that's not just writing down people's hours, it's just not writing down the changes that occurred. It's recording your successes. You should be proud of what you're doing. You should also be proud of the challenges that you face. One of the things I know that I ask is, what did you learn as a leader? What did you do well as a leader? Where do you think as a leader you should be improving? And those are some of the things I ask about at the board. And pictures. Again, you don't need a full book of pictures, but pictures at certain stages of the project certainly help tell the story. And now we're going to have Beth Dibble up. Thank you.
Thank you. So, the moment has arrived. You've got your Eagle Border review on schedule and you're getting all ready for this. What should you expect? It's kind of the same, you know, there's some similarities to the project review, but it's a border review. So it's like a border review in a sense that you would have had at the troop for all your ranks. But this is in front of people that you may not have ever met before. So, just to back up, so your project is done, but it's interesting, a lot of people think it has to be the last step. It has to be the last thing you finish before you get to Eagle. That isn't necessarily true. If you come to the board and you're missing a merit badge, you can't have your board, and it happens occasionally. So, again, to go back on some of the things we've said, when your project is done and you followed your plan and the beneficiary is happy, you need to complete the workbook, including the project report. And what it will, and again, you read through this workbook, read through it a lot so you know what to expect. This is a summary of the project. Any changes, and again, any changes that, it's always best to double check with the board member that was assigned to you at your project review, just to make sure it's okay. Again, no surprises. We don't like surprises at the board. What leadership you showed. How did you demonstrate that leadership? That's one of the major things in an Eagle project. And the materials and supplies and tools, because again, you have to kind of justify the money you raised versus what it cost you for things. Prices may have changed since you did your initial research for your project plan. And the data. So the hours spent by the scout, the BSA registered scouts, and anybody else who helped you. Now, as we've mentioned before, there is no minimum required as far as hours are concerned. It's just the BSA likes to know. It's kind of something, they keep statistics, that way they can kind of have almost bragging rights, you know, in the community and say, look at all these wonderful things that our scouts have done over the last year. And it really helps as you're going along to have like a log. People sign in and sign out. Some people can stay for an hour, some people will stay all day. This way you can keep a running tally of all the hours. And don't forget the ones that you spent planning. You spent going to board meetings to ask for permissions, or meeting with your beneficiary. All those hours count as working hours. And update any of the forms that are there with all the latest information before you go. This is a summary form. Again, this is part of the workbook. And you fill that out. And it includes fundraising, it includes photos. Again, as Mr. Berman said, photos. The people who sit on your board of review may not be the same people who sat on your project review, and they may not be from the town that you're from. So they may have no idea about this wonderful little corner of your town that you did this project in. If you have before and after pictures, that's going to really help people see. Could we lose the lights over the...
Oh, sure.
I just realized it's hard to see the screen. Perfect. So here are some raised beds that a scout did. This is like an in-process picture, so you can see the scouts, you know, they're posing, hi, we're doing this, before and after, during, all of that to show how much work was done. And again, it's a really good idea to assign a photographer for each workday. Quite often a parent's a really good job, so they kind of stay busy and don't bother you and try to take over. Trust me, it's a good idea. Are you ready for your board? How do you know when you are ready for your board? If the project is done and all the other requirements, the merit badges, the time and rank, your position requirement, all of those things are done. You've had your Scoutmaster conference. That's all done. Where do you go to get this information? Right. And submit your Eagle application. You pick that, it was one of those slides that Mr. Carson showed you earlier. So you submit your Eagle application, your statement of ambition and life purpose, and the final portion only of the project workbook, not the whole workbook. Bring that to your board of review. Don't submit the workbook. And all of the work must be completed by your 18th birthday. It doesn't have to be submitted to council by your 18th birthday. What if the Scoutmaster who has to sign your application is out of town? The Scoutmaster can't sign it before your 18th birthday, but when they do, the Scoutmaster is saying, yes, I agree, all the work was done before this Scout turned 18. So do it at 17 and save yourself a lot of and keep copies of everything. You can send it off electronically and somehow it doesn't get there, or whatever. I think Mr. Town alluded to this earlier, back everything up, have extra copies, keep it, keep it, keep it. And then the council staff will go over your application, double check your advancements, make sure that they have their records match your troops' records. Sometimes a merit badge was done but somehow didn't get recorded at council. So that has to all be checked. And then when this gets accepted, council checks off, says, yep, everything's here, everything's great. They will then contact whichever district you're from, the person that handles that kind of thing for that district, and let them know that you've submitted everything and you are ready for your board of review. And then that person will contact you and tell you when the next meeting is or whatever they require that you provide. So every district does things a little bit differently. So again, you'll be contacted by that Eagle Board representative about scheduling your board of review. And this could take 2 to 3 weeks. Council has been having some changes with personnel and stuff, so sometimes things are a little slower. If you don't hear, say, what do you think, Mr. Town? How are things going lately?
I'd give it 6 to 8 weeks.
Oh, okay, yeah. And then if not, then you call council and say, I haven't been contacted by the Eagle Board, what happened to my application, okay? You keep in touch with that, don't just assume it's gone where it needs to go, find out. Again, don't send your entire workbook. They don't want it at council. But again, do bring it to your board of review. And when that person in your district contacts you, they will say, okay, bring 3 copies to your meeting, and please send an electronic copy. I know in Arrowhead, we like that because then we can read it ahead of time, those of us who are going to sit on that board, and we can get a really good idea of what you've done and what kind of good questions there, we could ask at your board to make it go smoothly. But again, be patient. Everybody's got jobs, everybody has other things going on. The person at council who's doing that particular job could be on vacation the week you send your application. Sometimes, so there's be patient but keep on top of it, which sounds a little in contrast to one another, but you know what I mean. And again, NewHampshireScouting.org will answer a lot of your questions, give you the most updated form for everything, the most updated information for everything, and email addresses and phone numbers that you may need to contact people. If you don't know who your district Eagle Board chair is, you can ask your Scoutmaster or check the website for your district, and they will let you know. Any questions? I wish I could be more specific, but every district does it a little differently, so you have to kind of give a general overview of that. Okay, I think we are now ready for more action, acting from our lovely Eagle Board members.
Let me turn the lights back on, if whoever turned them.
Oops,
So I noticed some of you are using your multi-faceted device to help you do all things for your Eagle project. Others are writing notes with paper, pad, or pen or pencil. Some are on a laptop or a tablet. Whatever you use, know that will be your tool, and you may need more than one. But for example, a phone today can track your dates of when you want to carry things out. You can schedule them in your calendar. You can also track your service hours, the number of people working, and the people that are doing half an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. You can also take photos with it for your before and after. So you're all done. You have gone to the website and you have uploaded your application. You've uploaded your statement of aims and ambitions, and you've uploaded your last part of the Eagle workbook, your final project review. You're ready now for your final Eagle board review, your last board review for scouting. What does it look like? Well, we have another opportunity for you to see what it's like. Here's a mock final board review. You already know the players? Are we ready, players?
Yep.
Action.
All right, is everybody ready for our next Eagle candidate tonight?
I'm ready and waiting, yeah, here we go.
Let's start.
Here we go.
All right. Let's bring him in. Mr. Chip Toten, are you ready for your Eagle Board review? Come on in and have a seat.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Outdoor John, and I'm the Scoutmaster for Troop 007. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Eagle candidate Chip Toten for his Eagle Board of Review.
Welcome, Eagle candidate Chip. We're glad you're here tonight. And we'll ask you a few questions regarding your project, your leadership, and your whole scouting career, really. Your Scoutmaster and Eagle Coach are here to encourage you, but they'll remain silent as you answer the questions this evening. Please give us copies of your workbook. Wearing a very nice uniform tonight, along with all your merit badges on your merit badge sash. Looks good.
I remember this project, Chip. How did the planting of all the trees and shrubs turn out?
Well, by the time I was able to start this project, it was winter. The ground was frozen. That kind of prevented me from doing the digging that I intended. So my dad said, just put up a sign at the entrance. That would be okay. And since he used to be Scoutmaster, he knew what to do. This turned out to be fine because I turn 18 next week. I can't wait till spring to do this project.
Am I right in remembering that you planned on placing a conservation sign next to the wetlands? And how were you going to dig up the ground and install that sign in the frozen ground if you couldn't plant trees?
Well, actually, I didn't install the sign, but I got really lucky with this part of the project. The Town Conservation Commission suggested that since I was almost 18, the commission would make a sign and install it in the spring. I should be all set.
Tell me about your project team and how your leadership went. How did you get everyone to work together?
You know, we got along really well. My dad did all the work whenever I thought it was too difficult. Mr. Jones from the Town Park Committee, he really helped out a lot too. He's a hard worker and would often tell us what to do and when to do it. I noticed that he was really pleased when we were all done.
Freeze. All right. What's wrong with this picture? Let's have a couple of people that haven't maybe answered before. Not that I won't call on you again, but some folks that maybe haven't had a chance to help me co-direct. Give me some input. What's wrong with this picture? Yeah.
He changed his entire project.
Change the entire project. Right, can't do that. Yes.
He didn't plan the right times to do it.
Didn't plan the right time. He was ready to do planting and he waited till winter. Good. Yes.
Let his dad do the work where it got too hard for him.
Father did a lot of work. Who else did a lot of work?
The town and committee.
The town and the committee. Anything else wrong with this? Yeah.
He didn't even really lead it. He said like the other person would tell him like what to do when.
Exactly. Didn't show leadership. Didn't really hear anything about anyone else involved. It sounded like a couple of adults, and he kind of came along for the ride at the wrong time, not carrying out the right project. So several things were wrong. All right, let's pick it up from here. Action.
Chip, please describe your project for us.
Okay, well, my project was to plant trees and shrubs at the entrance of the new town park. You can read the details of in the project plan and see the accompanying photos, fundraising details in the workbook. I worked closely with the town park committee after securing permission from the Board of Selectmen. Since I waited too long to do my project, I was unable to do any planting in the frozen ground. So I went back to the town park committee and asked if a new entrance sign would be an acceptable alternative. I drew up a plan for a fairly complex sign, got their approval, and then the approval of the town selectmen. As you may recall, I contacted the Eagle Board liaison and then the Eagle Board project review panel for approval to change my project plan. A copy of that approval email is included in the workbook. Anyway, the sign turned out great. It was a lot of work. I used the adults that were familiar with carpentry as advisors, and they also operated some of the heavy power drills. I handed out flyers at the troop meetings and to my friends at school to get people to help. The building of the sign was difficult, so I gave everyone something to do to make the work be more fun and more tolerable. I assigned my dad to paint the back of the sign because he's good with a brush and he's pretty tall, so he could reach it. I obtained a wetlands protection sign from the State Wetlands Commission and installed it next to the swampy area. That sure took some digging, but I stuck to the plan and got it done. I did have some trouble getting helpers on the second weekend because everyone worked so hard on the first weekend. Even so, I did get some helpers, and we finished the job. Mr. Jones from the town park committee was really worried about everything, so I asked Scoutmaster John how to best handle him. The Scoutmaster talked to him privately. I don't know what he said, but Mr. Jones seemed much happier after that. He even wrote a nice letter of thanks, which I included in the project report. And of course, my mom was great, and she brought pizza and sodas for both of the workouts.
Freeze. Doesn't that sound much better? Carried out the scope of the project, very detailed, organized, clearly communicated it, and now we're ready to hear some other questions that you might be asked at a typical final board review. Action.
So Chip, what was your most meaningful scouting experience?
Next.
What was the hardest part of your project?
Next.
What would you have done to raise funds if the town wasn't able to provide you with the money for the materials?
Next.
I see that your final tally of hours and materials differs from what was in your project plan.
Next.
Tell us about your experience while serving in a position of leadership with your troop while you were a Life Scout.
Freeze. These questions for the candidate continue with the board members until they're satisfied. So they're trying to find out more about your scouting experience, your journey, how you got here. Then the board may ask questions about advancement, the candidate's scouting history, personal events and reflections, and whatever else may come to mind. It's not a test. This is just to get to know you and how much scouting is done for you and how scouting moved the spirit of scouting in and through you to others. Scouts' paperwork is in order. A good job was demonstrated showing leadership during the project and also the contribution of serving the community. That shows that you're living out the Scout oath and law. And then submitting a solid personal statement together with your Eagle rank application, you'll be fine as you get forward for the Eagle Board Review. All right, let's talk about a couple more things. Action.
That's all the questions I have. Is there anything else for other members of the board?
I think I'm good.
Seems like we've covered everything.
Okay, Chip, would you and Scoutmaster John step out of the room for a few minutes?
This is the Eagle Board's opportunity to see if there are any concerns regarding the candidates' answers and qualifications. In some districts, and the proceedings may ask the Scoutmaster or the Eagle Coach some questions. After carefully reviewing all the information, if nothing else is further necessary, the board must reach a unanimous decision that will be able to say the Scout has earned his or her Eagle Scout. On a rare occasion, the board may recess and be able to go back to the Scout and have him fulfill other requirements or answer better questions to get more information and schedule an additional time to come back to the board. So let's hear how the final session concluded.
Get my steps in. Here we go. Eagle candidate Chip and your Scoutmaster, would you please come in and have a seat?
So Chip, we've reviewed your Eagle Scout rank application, your scouting record, the details of your service project. We're pleased to inform you that the members have unanimously agreed to approve your application for the rank of Eagle Scout tonight. Pending verification by National BSA, you'll be an Eagle Scout effective on today's date. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Good job, Chip.
You already applauded. We appreciate that. We thank you, actors, for doing a great job. Let's just kind of open it up for any questions, observations, maybe some things that you're not really clear on. Go ahead. This is your time. Yes?
For the scout who's soliciting volunteers from the troop to help with the project,
Yes.
those scouts that help with the project, do those hours that they help count towards community service hours for their rank advancement?
Yes. And if it's a conservation project, it could be conservation hours. So again, the scout is keeping track of everyone who works on his or her project, but then how does that then go to the scout's record? So you gotta make sure that gets transferred in if you use troop master or something else. I saw a hand back there. Another question? Yeah.
Going back to fundraising, I'm wondering about, is soliciting donations okay? Like, can you go to a lumberyard and say, any chance you could donate some 4x4s for this project
You
on behalf of this
use the right
library,
second word,
something?
not soliciting. You're not going to ask for money, but you can ask for a donation.
You can ask for a donation of the product.
Yeah.
Okay.
And a lot of places are very generous to scouts.
But I believe that requires the fundraising application.
Yes, yes, yeah.
And interestingly enough, in my experience, in the experience of a lot of scouts I've talked to, smaller community places are quite often more generous than the big box hardware stores, just.
Yeah.
Are parents allowed to come into the Board of Review, either the initial or the final?
Oh, great question. So, yes, guide to advancement. If you're insecure and you feel like you need your mom or dad with you, then they can come in. We don't encourage that. We want a scout to be there on their own and be able to present on his or her own answers and capabilities, and also have the freedom. Sometimes a parent might give too much stress to them. I remember competing in gymnastics in high school. I hated when my dad was there. My mom okay, but not my dad. You know, something about him just caused me not to do my best. So we often will have parents wait, and then the scout will go in with a scout master and or Eagle coach. And it depends on the board with which district what's allowed. So
I think it's a great idea for the parents to be in the building and a terrible idea for the parents to be in the room.
and what we do in Massabesic, and I'm not sure about the other districts, that last section when they get called back in, we'll often say, can you bring your parents with you?
I negated to say that.
No, that's fine.
It was in the script and I forgot.
Yep, that's fine. And the nice thing is then that final welcome, you know, and you fulfill all the requirements, the parents are there and part of that. Other questions? Yes?
Are there any limitations for the scout to delegate work to their family members?
No?
No?
In fact, someone asked a question earlier about service hours. I often will ask a scout, what would be in it for a scout to help you with your project? And I had a scout that actually built a computer for an elementary school in Manchester. And I'm like, wow, one computer, one scout, how is he going to show leadership? And I said, would the school appreciate more than one computer? Yes, I think they would. Well, how about making 4 computers? Could you go back to the beneficiary and just say if they would like 4 computers? I can do that. Well, how many people in your troop might want to learn about computers? What could they get out of it? Computer merit badge. So could you get a merit badge counselor to help them with the requirements of that as you lead them through building computers? So now the project grew to be more substantial, something he could be proud of, will be lasting, and the beneficiary got 4 versus 1 computer, and scouts got to earn computer merit badge. Great. Other questions, especially you scouts? Yeah.
Do you need all your blue cards like with you when you're going like for all your required ones?
Great question. You don't. The Eagle application, which will have all that information in, and that's what gets vetted once it gets uploaded. It'll get checked against the scout records for national and for council, and then that should be all verified through your advancement chair in your troop.
But keep them, because if there is a discrepancy, that can help you get that resolved, so keep them.
Yeah, what I might...
Either that or the pocket cards you get with the thing.
What I would recommend is even before you come to the board, your advancement chair and your scoutmaster, just make sure all that information is correct, all the signatures are in place. That's really helpful. Other questions? So I just want to make a personal comment. 3 signatures minimum, but get all your signatures. Always, always, always make sure you get your signatures. Scoutmaster, unit chair, and beneficiary. The 4th is yours. You should always sign your own paperwork, so that should always be there. But 3 are key. The other one is, the project should be something that will be impactful to many other people. I had someone that did what I call the home improvement project that I used to do with my kids. I don't know if they did it up here in New Hampshire, but in Massachusetts, the first Saturday of the month, you could take your toddlers, your preschoolers, your first and second graders, and you build like a birdhouse or a couple of shelves. That's not an Eagle project. Like we talked about before, just laying a couple of 4x4s along a path. Make it be something that will count and be meaningful, not only for you, but for others, for years to come. Okay.
I could add one more thing. And this really applies to the high school seniors. There's often a crush towards the late fall because you want to include Eagle Scout on that college application or military paperwork. And right now that 2 to 3 week is really optimistic in terms of when you submit your application to when you have your final board. So just plan ahead for that. I think giving yourself an extra month, you'd be wise to do that.
Yeah, just to piggyback, just to say it again, when you go to upload to the council, don't contact your Eagle chair or your advancement chair. You can, we won't get mad at you, but what we're going to say is, I can't schedule your final board until I get the paperwork from council. So just be patient. But really what Mr. Tuba said, work ahead. I had a couple of scouts this year say, well, I'm almost done, can I put on my Eagle application? No, because that word almost was there.
Yeah.
You got to be done. Remember, scouts are trustworthy and honest, okay? Any other comments?
Okay, Beth, that's up.
Oh,
The next one?
yeah, I am.
Did you have one more question?
If we're still going, it's about signage, so it's not about board of review.
Okay.
We can have general questions if you
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, so I am here to talk about, and this is literally your last resort. It's there, but I know everyone in this room is not going to need this. But I'm just putting it out there just in case, because sometimes things happen and you can't plan for them. So there is a process within the BSA for Eagle extensions, and we're going to talk a little bit about what qualifies for that. So the reason this, could someone get the lights again? Thank you. The reason that I put that graphic up there about that book, it's called The Guide to Advancement. This is the Advancement Bible. If you feel you might need a time extension, this is where you would go to find out if your situation is going to qualify or not, most likely. The most current version is always available on the national website. I'm not sure if it's on the council website or not, but it's on the national website, so scouting.org.
Cool.
So chapter 9 has the qualifications. Now, they're very general because there are always very unusual situations that come up that have never happened before. And I can say this because for about 6 or 7 years I served on the national board for time extensions and appeals. And we saw stuff that it's like, you can't believe that this weird thing happened to this poor scout. But things do happen, so. There are some generalities, though. So again, and the forms that you might need if you do decide to pursue this route, they are available on NewHampshireScouting.org advancement. So this is the process. First of all, you have to be a Life Scout. You know, if you're 14 and you're a Star Scout and you think, oh, well, you know, I've only got 4 years left, I might need an extension. No. You can only file this if you are at least a Life Scout. And you believe that you'll need time past your 18th birthday to complete the Eagle Scout requirement due to, and I have this in caps and in red and underlined, situations beyond your control. You need to file for a time extension. A great example of what is not beyond your control is, well, I got picked to be quarterback my senior year of high school. That was a choice. If you felt you wanted to become an Eagle and you didn't know if you'd have enough time if you were first string quarterback on the football team, you may need to make a choice. Do I play football or do I finish my Eagle? So that is not necessarily considered beyond your control. And again, there are broad examples in the Guide to Advancement. So a disabling illness or injury, and again, I've seen and read about a lot of very unusual things. We're not talking about a 3-day cold. We're talking about a broken bone, a devastating illness, an accident, something like that. But we would judge whether or not that's considered to be, and have to have medical backup, we have to have documentation, it's a big process. A family emergency. What can qualify as a family emergency? A death of a parent, something major where the family ended up having to totally relocate to a different part of the country. It has to be that level of emergency. It's not just, oh, my mom had to pull an extra shift at work on the weekend we were going to do the project. That isn't a family emergency. A natural disaster. I sound like Rob Lowe from Parks and Rec, literally had this example where a scout was going to do a project in a park in his community, and it got hit by a hurricane. That really did qualify for, because the place was obliterated. It was just covered with trees and power lines. He couldn't even get into the area for months because there were live lines, and it was just, and I think it was Katrina, actually. It was an absolute mess. Did I see a hand somewhere? No? Okay. If you think you might need an extension, again, last ditch effort, you don't want to go there because it's not that easy. They don't happen that often. Go to that book, get the most recent version, and read that section very carefully. It's got a good index in the book. You don't have to write this down. You'll just go in there and see time extensions, and you'll see it. There is a form. It's downloadable on the national website that needs to be filled out completely and uploaded. There is a place to click on the New Hampshire Scouting.org advancement site. Once that is done, some of the council gets it. It gets routed to Mr. Parsons, who then usually routes it to me, because that is my job one of my jobs on the committee. And then the process begins. Depending on how much information is provided from the beginning, some people read the form very carefully and see, oh, I'm asking for a medical thing, so I need letters from my daughter's doctor or surgeon or other medical professional, like a long-term situation. They'll see that. If it's not there and they're claiming a medical exemption, then I have to call the parent and say, hey, Mrs. Smith, I need this information before I can go any further. So the more information that's provided at the beginning, the easier it is to get this process taken care of. So I've been known to contact Scoutmaster, other unit leaders, Eagle Coach, the parents. I always ask the parent or the Scoutmaster, is there any other adults that I can talk to that might help clarify what's going on, what the situation is? The more information we have to make a decision, the better. When I figure we've gathered everything that can be gathered, then it goes to the entire advancement committee, Daniel Webster Council Advancement Committee, to decide whether or not to grant the extension. So it's a big deal. Again, every Scout's case is different. Not every possibility has been specifically talked about in that section of the book. And again, it may, depending on the situation, it may require a lot of documentation. I need, I interview people over the phone, I get emails. Some of these things have taken me a couple of months because, oh, this person with a vital piece of information is away on vacation and they can't be reached, so I have to wait for that person to get back to get that piece of information that the parent says is really, really important for us to see what their child's situation is. Again, it can all take time. It can take a week or two, it can take months. Because in my capacity, I need to make sure that everything has been looked at carefully and everything's been done so we can make the best decision. And again, I'm like the gatherer of information, but I don't make the decision all on my own. That's very important for everybody to know. It's not a single person that makes this decision, it's the entire committee, which at times is 8 people, 9 people. So it's everybody is involved. And everybody who sits on this committee, by the way, is a very experienced, not only scouter, but experienced in advancement. Either at the unit level or the district level. They've been doing advancement and quite often Eagle Board stuff for a very long time. So we've seen a lot. So no matter what, continue to work on your requirements. That's the first thing I do when I reply to an email, if it's sent to me by the scout, by the parent or the leader. Those are the three people that can file for this thing. I say, I'll start working on this, but tell the scout to keep working on advancements. If there's a merit badge that is the reason you can't finish in time, do as much as you can on that merit badge. If there's been a problem getting the project done, just keep whittling away. Don't wait to hear from us to keep going. That actually has a bearing on whether or not we think a person's really serious about this, because if they just say, well, I'm just gonna, sit back and play video games for the next 2 months till I hear back from that lady. No, that's not gonna fly, guys. Does anyone have any questions about that process? Because there's a lot of stuff on the website, but again, everything's different. My main takeaway is try to avoid this as much as you can, because it's very stressful for the people involved. I don't mean us, I mean the parents and the families. So just don't wait too long, because waiting too long is also not an unforeseeable circumstance. That's not going to make us likely to grant the extension. Just waiting too long is not an excuse. It's all that time management stuff we've been talking about all morning. All right.
Lights, please. All right, we're just about to wrap it up. Some final comments. First of all, I want to thank our great panel of speakers. Excellent job, guys. They take time out of their lives to prepare, come up with these great presentations and share their wisdom. And before I make my final comments, any final questions? Do you have one more question?
Yeah, I had a question. Just you spoke about signage of the project plaques. I was curious if there's an example of anything they need to do. Is there a font? Is there a BSA logo that,
So you mean
that is approved?
a plaque at the final,
Yes.
The project. First of all, that's not required.
Okay.
I want to be clear. I know it was said, like intimated, oh, you should have that. Not required. It's a nice to see thing. Obviously, we want it. People like to say, hey, the Eagle project. It's great. So the answer is no to the question about fonts and size. That's between the Scout and the Eagle Board. If they want to do it, agree on what it should look like, how it should be presented.
Okay, great.
Not required.
Thank you.
Yes?
So for the Eagle application, do you only want to see the initial part, or do you want to see whoever, when you send it out, you only send in the application piece or the entire workbook?
So there's 3 places you upload on that webpage. One is the application.
No, that's when you're finished. That's at the
Okay.
end. I'm talking about right in the beginning when you're sending out your initial.
Nothing. You don't upload anything. The district, you contact the district, and they will tell you what to bring. And you should bring your Eagle Workbook project approval section completed.
Okay, you don't email it?
That's going to be between you and the district. There's 7 districts, they all have different rules. So listen carefully, and you'll get instructions from whoever's representing the district. Some want them emailed, some want to upload it to a website, some want just paper. It varies.
So it's Arrowhead.
Arrowhead, how do you
Email it.
It's been done, the whole thing.
Email the project proposal,
Oh, only the proposal?
right, with all the signatures on it.
Okay. Good. Anything else?
Cool, thank you.
All right. Well, I guess we did all right. So I just had a little research I wanted to pass along. Back in 2010, Baylor University researchers surveyed 2,500 adults, of which 134 were Eagle Scouts, about 5% of the total. They asked them 55 questions, and I won't go through them all. But they were touching on the topics such as well-being, civic engagement, and character development. And the purpose of this survey was to answer the question, do Eagle Scouts experience additional positive attributes that provide advantage and benefits to them over non-Scouts or Scouts that did not earn Eagle? So the summary is that the analysis of the National survey reveals significant differences between Eagle Scouts and others. Eagle Scouts consistently indicate their experience in scouting contributed to positive and pro-social development as measured by responses to a wide range of issues and subjects. Specifically, Eagle Scouts exhibit an increased tendency to participate in a variety of health and recreational activities. Eagle Scouts are more likely to engage in behaviors that are designed to enhance and protect the environment. Eagle Scouts are more likely to be committed to setting and achieving personal, professional, spiritual, and financial goals. Eagle Scouts show higher levels of planning and preparedness. That should not be a surprise. Eagle Scouts are more likely than others to indicate that they have built character traits related to work ethics, morality, tolerance, and respect for diversity. In sum, Eagle Scouts exhibit significantly higher levels of health and recreation, connection, service and leadership, environmental stewardship, goal orientation, and planning and preparedness. So that's pretty good motivation on top of whatever else you would motivate you to go to Eagle. So today we've given you practically all you need to know to finish your hike to Eagle. Now that you know the way to finish the hike, earn your Eagle Award and join the ranks of the many Eagle Scouts that have come before you. Thank you, and the best of luck, and happy Easter if you're celebrating.